Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. I yank my left hand off the table as he stands. The fork slips and clatters loudly, and everyone looks straight at me. I am Jenna, and I was 29 that night. Up there by the head chair, he taps his glass for attention. I already know I am about to pretend I am nobody. His late wife's parents sit across from us, watching him like a movie. He lifts his glass and smiles, that careful, polite smile he uses now. "Thank you for being here," he starts, and my chest tightens hard. He talks about love and loss and how some bonds never really end. He does not mention me once, and I count every skipped word. They all know me from hospital visits and errands and background support. To them, I am the helpful coworker who drops off casseroles sometimes. To me, I am his future wife, and my hand is shaking. He raises his glass higher and calls this a night to honor her. My ring presses into my palm because I keep my fingers clenched tight. When he finally mentions me, he uses the words "friend from work." The phrase lands like a bad joke, and my ears start buzzing. A few heads nod politely, and someone lifts a hand in my direction. I give a small wave and feel my face stretch into something fake. I know I should smile because we planned that I stay gentle tonight. After the toast, his former mother-in-law pulls him into a long hug. She tells him he is still so loyal, and her eyes shine with pride. I stand up to greet her, and she squeezes my elbow like decoration. "You always help out, sweetie," she says. "You are such a good friend." I curl my left hand behind my back so the ring cannot flash. Looking back, that was the moment I should have walked outside. In real time, though, I just kept nodding and told myself to breathe. I had promised him I would not start anything big during this dinner. So I swallowed every sharp question and let them talk about his devotion. The problem is, once you start swallowing things, do you remember how to speak? His late wife's sister drops into the chair beside me during the next course. She leans close and tells me he has been a rock through everything. "Most men would have moved on by now," she whispers, "but not him." Her words hit me harder than any insult, and I feel myself go cold. I almost blurt out that we picked a wedding date last month and stop. Instead, I test the water and ask if she thinks he will date someday. Her head snaps toward me, and she stares like I grew a second face. "He already gave his heart once," she answers, "and some people only get one chance." She taps the framed photo near her plate, and I know I crossed a line. I laugh too loudly and say I was just making small talk and choke. By dessert, my headache pulses, and I keep rubbing the groove under my ring. His late wife's mother turns to me and asks if I have anyone special. The whole table goes quiet, and he coughs into his napkin like he choked. For a second, I see an opening, a tiny door, and my mouth actually opens. Then he cuts in fast and jokes that I am married to my job and laughs. Everyone chuckles, and the moment passes, and I feel something inside me crack hard. I stare at him while they all start talking again, and he will not look up. From the outside, we probably looked peaceful, just another quiet family dinner with memories. Inside my mind, though, I was already planning the fight that would explode later. That night was the first time I realized my biggest threat was not their grief but his silence. By the time he turned the ignition, I already had the first sentence loaded. I waited until his in-laws' place shrank in the mirror, then I fired. "You really introduced me as some random coworker." My voice came out steadier than I felt, which honestly scared me. He gripped the wheel tighter and stared straight ahead like the road could save him. For a few seconds, he pretended not to know what I meant. "The memorial was hard for them," he muttered, like that answered anything important. I laughed once, too high, too sharp, and it hung between us. "You skipped over the whole engaged part," I said, and my thumb dug into my ring. He winced when I used that word, like I had slapped him in the dark. He tried again with that gentle tone he saves for fragile topics. "Tonight was not the right moment," he told me. "They are still so raw." I stared at the dashboard and counted my breaths so I would not yell. "You let them call you faithful while my ring sat in their dining room," I said. He flinched at faithful, and I knew that word was a landmine he walked on purpose. He finally glanced over, quick, then back to the road as a car passed. "You saw how her mom looked," he whispered. "She barely holds it together." He was pleading for sympathy, but it felt like he was borrowing mine. "So you keep the fantasy alive, and I just play background extra." The more I spoke, the more my own choices started to sting. He shook his head once, and his jaw locked hard as he merged. I am trying to protect them from another shock, he said. That anniversary is coming. That anniversary. Like this secret was a respectful pause and not a whole double life. I stared out my window and realized he had given them a version of him I did not know. When I asked how long this cover story would go on, he finally gave a number. After that date we talked about, he promised I will sit them down. He tapped the steering wheel with his thumb in a nervous, quick rhythm. You just have to trust me a bit longer, he added, and that word trust hit wrong. I felt something tighten in my chest, not grief, not anger, just a heavy no. Here is the part I am still embarrassed to admit. A piece of me wanted to agree, to stay small, to wait quietly. It would have been easier to nod and pretend I understood. If you have ever loved someone messy, you know that temptation. I almost swallowed it and let him keep two lives running side by side. Instead, my fingers moved before my brain actually decided anything. I slid the ring off under my hand, slow like it burned. Metal scraped my skin and that tiny sound felt huge inside the car. His eyes flicked down for half a second and he saw the gap. The rhythm of his thumb on the wheel stopped like someone hit a switch. At the next red light, I reached over and set the ring on his knee. The gesture was quiet, but it landed louder than any scream. He stared at it for a long beat, then at me, then back. If I am just a comforting coworker to them, I said, you can keep the jewelry. He sucked in a breath so fast his chest actually shook a little. Do not do this in the car, his voice came out rough and low. He pulled into an empty lot and threw it in park with jerky hands. For a moment neither of us spoke and the engine hummed between us. He took the ring carefully like it might shatter, not like he earned it. Jenna, he whispered, you know I love you, you know this is not fake. I believed he loved me, that was the worst part of all this. Love was not the question anymore, not the missing piece on the board. Do you love me enough to be honest in front of them? The words came out slow and heavy, one by one, no way to pull back. He closed his eyes and his shoulders dropped like he had been carrying something impossible. You think I enjoy hiding you, he asked, you think this feels good? He looked almost offended, which would be funny if it were not my life. I told him I did not care how it felt, I cared what he chose. You let them paint you as some eternal widower while I sit there smiling. Saying it out loud made me realize just how twisted that whole picture really was. He rubbed his face with one hand and left the other on the wheel. They lost their daughter once, he murmured through his fingers, I cannot rip away the image they cling to. He talked about their grief like it was a fragile object I might break. What about me, I asked, am I supposed to live as a rumor forever? His answer came late and thin, like he had to manufacture it on the spot. You are not a rumor, he insisted, his voice rising, you are my future. The word future landed like a promise and an insult at the same time. If I am your future, why do I disappear every time they enter the picture? I could hear my tone climbing sharper, and I hated how desperate it sounded. I was not begging to be loved, I was begging to be acknowledged in daylight. He held the ring up between two fingers and looked at it like a problem. I just need time to get them ready, he repeated, almost like a script. You are asking me to sit in the shadows while you prep your audience. I felt a wave of shame because I had gone along with that plan once. This time I forced myself to keep eye contact until he finally looked away first. Here is where something in me shifted and did not shift back again. I told him I would not be the secret fiancé he dusted off in private. Either we tell them within a clear short window or we stop this now. My hands shook while I laid out the terms, but my voice held steady. I think he realized in that moment that I meant it down to the bone. He nodded slowly, then reached over and tried to place the ring back. His fingers brushed my palm and lingered there like he could stall the decision. Please put it on, he whispered, I will handle everything, I swear to you. I pulled my hand back and left the ring resting in his open fingers. Not yet, I answered, you do not get the symbol before the courage. We drove home with that small circle of metal between us on the console. Every bump in the road made it rattle slightly and both of us noticed. From the outside, it probably looked like any tired couple after a hard event. Inside, the air felt thick with expectations neither of us had words for. I did not know then that this was the calmest our fights would ever be. I forgot to hide my hand the second the door opened. His late wife's sister filled the doorway and my ring sat right there. Her gaze dropped to it so fast my stomach flipped. Yet over. She did not greet us first, she just stared at my finger. Behind me, his steps faltered on the porch like he had missed a stair. That from him. Her voice came out flat, no hello, no small talk, just that. My first instinct was to tuck my hand into my pocket. Instead, I forced it still, which felt brave and stupid at once. I heard him exhale behind me like air leaking from a balloon. Yeah. My throat felt tight, but the words still came out. Her mouth stretched into something that was not really a smile. You should come in, she told me, almost too cheerful. He can bring the flowers. She stepped aside and left him standing there on the porch with both hands full. I followed her down the hallway and felt him hesitate behind us. He did not rush to stay at my side, he drifted. By the time we reached the living room, she had already shut the door. The soft click sounded way louder than it should have. I realized she wanted me alone before we had even taken a seat. She pointed at the ring again without sitting down herself. How long has that been there? Her arms folded across her chest and her foot tapped once. I gave her the real number and watched her face tighten with each word. The silence after I finished felt heavier than anything she could have shouted. So that is what he calls it now. She spoke slowly, like she was tasting something bitter on her tongue. Engagement. Her eyes flashed toward the door like she could see him through it. I felt a chill crawl up my spine even though the room was warm. Look, I started because I could see this going wrong fast. We got serious much later than you think, I promised, after everything. Her laugh cut me off and it was not amused at all. Do you really believe you are the first one, she asked, you honestly think that? She shook her head like she almost felt sorry for me and it stung. She told me she had seen his phone once right before the accident. Late messages, private calls outside, his voice soft and guilty. You think we are blind, she asked, you think we missed all of that? She kept moving while she talked, pacing small tight circles in front of me. I sat there frozen because I had no idea what version she knew. You were around already. The certainty in her tone made my heart hammer against my ribs. Maybe not this ring, she went on, but there was someone. Someone he could not let go even when my sister was still here. Her words landed one by one and I could not keep up. I told her I had not even met him back then. The second the sentence left my mouth, I knew it did not matter. She looked at me like I was a kid lying about stolen candy. Maybe you think that timeline sounds better, she said, but it does not erase anything. He was checked out long before she hit that intersection and you are the proof. If you have ever been accused of something nasty you did not do, you know that dizzy feeling. My palms started to sweat and my voice came out thinner than I wanted. What intersection, I asked, because that detail hit harder than everything else. Her jaw clenched and I realized she thought I knew every piece already. You do not even know how she died, she whispered, and suddenly I felt like an intruder. She dropped onto the nearest chair like her legs finally gave out. You know what my mother said when those texts came out, she asked quietly. She said at least now we understand why he barely came to her treatments. My chest burned and I could not find a way to breathe normally. In that moment I understood they did not just dislike me, they blamed me for years of pain. I tried again to correct the record and my voice shook. You have the wrong person, I told her. I was not in his life then. She studied my face like she was trying to peel off a mask. He never denied it when we confronted him, she shot back not once. It felt like someone had just shoved another person's crime into my hands. The front door opened and closed and footsteps entered the hallway. He walked in carrying nothing now, which meant he had dropped the flowers somewhere. His eyes bounced between us and landed on my bare expression. Everything okay? His tone was casual, but his shoulders were tight and high. Ask her, his sister-in-law replied. She lifted her chin in my direction. Ask your fiancé how long this has really been going on. The word fiancé came out twisted, like she could not stand how it sounded. He went very still, like he thought if he froze the moment would too. I waited for him to laugh it off and finally tell the truth. Instead he dragged a hand across his mouth and bought himself a beat. It is complicated, he muttered, and that was all he gave her. Complicated. Not wrong, not untrue, not you have the timeline backwards. That single weak word did more damage than any open admission. Her face crumpled into a mix of disgust and vindication. Thank you, she told him, so we were not crazy after all. She turned to me with that saw me broken triumph in her eyes. You got what you wanted, she added, at least be honest about the cost. I wanted to scream that I had not asked for any of this story. He stepped between us like a human shield and reached for my hand. I jerked away on reflex because I did not trust him in that second. "Let us not do this right now," he urged, his voice low and urgent. "We came to pay respects, remember." The word respect in his mouth made me feel like I might actually throw up. She stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You paid when she was alive by texting other women," she snapped. "You pay now by parading one in here with a ring." Her eyes were wet, but her stare did not soften at all. "Once people decide you are the villain, they will collect any scrap that helps." He told her they would talk later and guided me toward the door. His hand hovered at the small of my back, not quite touching. I let him steer me out because I knew if I opened my mouth I would explode. Behind us, she called out that her parents deserved to hear it from them, not the gossip. That promise hung in the air as we stepped out of the house. The moment we hit the porch, I pulled free from his reach. "What did you tell them before?" I asked, because clearly it was not nothing. He stared at the floorboards and answered too slowly for my nerves. "I let them assume some things," he admitted. "It helped them put rage somewhere. That somewhere had my face on it, and he had just confirmed it." "You let them believe you cheated with me." I did not raise my voice, which somehow made it worse. He opened his mouth, then shut it again like he could not pick a version. I watched his indecision and realized this mess was not an accident. It was a pile of half-truths he had stepped over for years, and I had just landed in the middle. We walked back to the car without touching each other once. The flowers sat abandoned near the front steps, already forgotten. He unlocked the car and waited for me to get in first like always. I stood there for a second and stared at the house instead. Inside those walls I was not a partner at all, I was the affair. They had a place set just for me and it felt like a trap. An extra plate at the end of the table away from him. He pulled the chair closer to his, scraping it until his father-in-law frowned. "Stay near me," he muttered under his breath, like that fixed anything. Every eye in that room weighed more than my own body. His mother-in-law came over and kissed his cheek with trembling hands. She skipped me completely and went straight back to her seat. His sister-in-law watched from the side like a referee before a fight. "Thank you both for coming," his father announced. "We need some clarity tonight." He used that word clarity like a warning shot. No one picked up a fork until he finished his little intro. He looked around slowly, landing last on me and not smiling. "We have all lived in confusion for a long time," he began. I felt my pulse jump because I knew which confusion he meant. My fingers tightened around my napkin until it twisted like rope. "We know you cared for our daughter once," he continued, voice steady. "We watched you drift, we watched you pull away, we watched her suffer." Each line hit the table like a heavy object I could not dodge. "Now you show up with this young woman on your arm," he added. His hand cut toward me like I was an exhibit. My fiancé shifted and finally spoke, too soft for the moment. "We came because I want everything open," he said, "nothing hidden anymore." That word hidden made my stomach churn, but I held eye contact. His mother-in-law dabbed at her eyes, yet never glanced my way. They were mourning and prosecuting at the same time. His father finally turned to me and gave a tight nod. "I am going to speak plainly," he warned. "You deserve to hear it. We think you were in the picture before the crash ever happened. We think you were the person he texted while our girl sat alone." The word "you" burned right through my ribs. I heard a chair creak as my fiancé straightened a little. "That is not exactly how it went," he started, voice low and shaky. "Exactly or not," his father cut in, "you never denied there was someone. So that someone now sits at our table with a ring." He stared at my hand like the metal personally offended him. I did something brave or stupid then, maybe both at once. I cleared my throat and spoke without looking at my fiancée. "I was not in his life when she was still here," I said. "I met him after the funeral, long after your daughter passed." My voice stayed firm, but my heart hammered against my ribs. For a second there was total stillness, almost like they froze. His sister-in-law broke it with a bitter half-laugh. "So he just magically found a new soulmate right after burying her." She leaned forward with her elbows on the table like she smelled lies. "You really expect us to believe he woke up faithful again overnight?" He rubbed his forehead like he could wipe the moment away. "I never claimed to be perfect during those last months," he confessed. The word months made his mother gasp and grab for the table edge. "You told us you were just overwhelmed," she whispered, tears starting to fall. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back before he touched her. I could have stayed quiet and let that confession swallow me too. Instead, I focused on the exact thing I could not ignore. You let them connect me to that, I asked him, eyes fixed. You heard them call me the other woman and you said nothing. His shoulders sagged like I had punched straight through his chest. We were all hurting, he replied. I did not know how to correct them. His father slapped his palm on the table and cut him off. You did not want to correct us, he snapped. You wanted someone to blame. He turned to me again and his voice dropped lower. So he poured years of guilt onto you and called it love. If I tell you I felt exposed, that word is still too small. Every flaw I had ever hidden felt suddenly visible and loud. I thought I could fix it with facts, so I tried again. You are wrong about the timeline, I insisted. I have messages to prove it. His mother flinched at the word messages like it was another wound. We do not need to see your phone, his sister-in-law cut in. We watched him disappear right in front of us while she was still breathing. Maybe you arrived later, maybe not. What difference does it make now? In our story, you are the person on the other end of that line. You are what explains every night he left her waiting. That was the first time I truly understood stories as weapons. They had one that made their pain make sense, and I ruined it. He could have thrown them a new story right there and did not. Instead, he stared at his plate like the answer sat between the dishes. Every second he stayed quiet pushed me further out of the family frame. His father finally exhaled and sat back, still glaring at him. Fine, you say she came after, he said, then this is what I hear. You buried our daughter and then went shopping for a replacement. He spit that last word with so much contempt my eyes burned. Replacement landed on my skin and stuck like something toxic. My fiance pushed his chair back with a rough scrape. That is not what happened, he argued. I was drowning and I met someone. I did not hunt for anything, it just happened, he added. Hearing him use "it just happened" about us twisted my stomach. The room filled with overlapping protests, and I could barely pick out words. His mother-in-law raised her voice over everyone, surprising me. Did you love my daughter when you started whatever this is, she asked. The whole table went silent so fast my ears rang slightly. He opened his mouth and closed it again, and I already knew. There was no answer that would save both him and me. He finally landed on the worst possible compromise. I cared for her deeply, he said, and I care for Jenna too. Two different kinds of love, he added, different times, different needs. His attempt at nuance sounded like confession and dodge all at once. His father laughed without humor and shook his head slowly. So you admit there was overlap in your heart, his father pressed. No one at this table is shocked, we watched it happen in real time. He turned to me, expression sharp like he wanted to see me break. You are not just a girlfriend to us, he said, you are the affair. Hearing it so plain made my hands go numb. I glanced at my fiancé and found his eyes on me instead of them. I am sorry, he whispered, barely audible, this got away from me. His apology felt tiny against the size of the damage. You let it get away from you, I answered, I live inside what you allowed. The fact that they heard that line did not even bother me anymore. His mother pushed her chair back like she might stand and collapse. I cannot bless this match, she murmured, her voice raw, not like this. Our daughter's memory is still bleeding, and you two keep tearing it open. She looked at me for the first time since we arrived. I do not hate you, she said, but I cannot see you as harmless either. That almost hurt more than outright hatred would have. She was telling me I was collateral damage and still dangerous. My fiancé reached for my hand under the table and I let him. His fingers shook and I felt every tremor like a warning bell. We were attached physically and still standing on opposite sides. His father cleared his throat again and tried to land the scene. If you want to stay together, he said, that is your choice. Just know there will be no happy joint holidays, no cozy shared milestones. You built this on lies and we are not blessing it with smiles. The sentence felt like a door slamming right in front of us. I slid my hand away from his and placed it on my lap. Thank you for telling me how you see me, I managed, voice thin. I will not try to convince you tonight, I added, I am too angry. I stood up before anyone could answer because I needed to breathe. Behind me, I heard his chair move like he had to decide whose side to follow. I muted his name for 3 days and still watched the screen. Texts stacked up anyway, short ones, long ones, missed calls in between. Are you okay? Please let me explain. On the fourth night, the sound came from the door instead of the phone. I saw his shadow through the peephole and almost walked away. My hand hit the lock before my brain voted on it. When I opened up, he looked wrecked, not polished, not controlled, just wrecked. I am not leaving until you hear everything, his voice came out rough. That word everything hooked me because I suddenly realized how little I knew. You had your chance at everything in their dining room, I reminded him. My arm stayed braced against the frame like a barrier. He swallowed hard and nodded like he agreed he had failed. There is more, and it is not for their ears, he answered. That sentence scared me more than their accusations did. I told him to talk there in the doorway, no step forward. He shook his head like that hallway could not carry what he had. If I say it here, he murmured, I will never sleep again. He asked me to get in the car instead, just one drive. I should have shut the door honestly, but curiosity and anger share a backbone. Fine, I said, but I pick where we go. He blinked, surprised, then jerked a nod like he would take any terms. I grabbed my keys and slid on shoes with shaky fingers. On the way down the stairs, I told myself I was only gathering evidence. You know that lie you tell right before you do something risky. We sat in his car without speaking for a full minute. The keys rested in the cup holder between us, untouched. If you're coming, he finally whispered, I need you fully here. I took a breath so deep it hurt and pressed the ignition button. The engine caught, and I realized my hands were already on the wheel. Turn where, he asked, watching my profile instead of the road. I gave directions in short clips, left, straight, right, no explanations. He recognized it before I finished, and his shoulders rose tight. The cemetery, he breathed out, like the word itself weighed double. If you're going to unload guilt, I told him, do it where it started. Night at that place hits different when you're not there for a holiday. He parked near the far edge and killed the engine with a quick twist. For a second, neither of us moved, doors closed, air heavy. He stared through the windshield at nothing and flexed his fingers once. I reached for the handle first because waiting felt like drowning slowly. We walked between stones without touching, just two separate lines. I had been there before with his family, flowers, prayers, practiced comfort. This time it felt like walking toward the source of a leak. He stopped at her name and his breath came out in a hard rush. I stayed a couple paces back because getting closer felt like trespassing. She called me that night, he began, eyes locked on the ground. Not the crash night, not the doctors, the night before all that. I felt my chest tighten because no one had given me that peace. I was at work late, he went on, and I did not pick up. He rubbed his thumb over the edge of the stone like it could answer. He told me his phone had lit up again 10 minutes later. This time it was a message, longer, furious, raw. She thought there was someone else already, he said, not looking at me. She had found things, not names, not faces, but enough to feel replaced. That word sliced through me because I knew how her family had used it. I asked the stupid question anyway. Was there, I asked, my voice tiny in that open space. He did not jump to deny it, and that silence was its own confession. He finally nodded once, short and miserable, eyes glassy but dry. I never touched anyone, he said, but my head was out of that marriage. He told me he had been checking out rental listings in another city. Saving screenshots, making plans, looking at jobs that did not fit his life. She caught one of the emails on their shared tablet, nothing explicit but clear. We had a screaming match in the kitchen over that, he continued. I told her I felt trapped and she heard I wanted her gone. He admitted the last thing he yelled before leaving was ugly. I told her if she hated me that much she should just go, he whispered. He shoved his hands into his pockets like he wanted to shove that sentence back. She slammed the door and went to cool off with her sister supposedly. He stayed behind convinced she would come home when she calmed down. She never did. Instead, his phone rang again hours later with a number he did not know. Accident. Impact. He described it in clipped words like reading someone else's nightmare. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat as he spoke. So I walked into that hospital already knowing the last thing I said, he continued. He let her family build whatever story made the blow survivable. They assumed there was another woman, he said, and I could not bring myself to correct them. He clenched his jaw so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. They needed a reason I had drifted, he added, so they made one. I had actually drifted, just not into an actual affair, and that felt worse. In his mind, emotional betrayal did not deserve defense, it deserved punishment. So when they started throwing that word around, he let it stick. He let it sink in until it grew roots in every conversation. I stood there listening and felt my sympathy and fury collide. I understood survivor guilt in theory. I had Googled that phrase before. But hearing how he cooperated with it, actively nurtured it, was different. You wore their version like a hair shirt, I said, and you dragged me into it. He winced a dragged because he knew that part was accurate. He dropped to a crouch in front of the stone like his knees buckled. I never fixed it because I thought I deserved their hatred, he confessed. Their blame made sense, it matched the way I blamed myself. Then you showed up and they slipped you into that empty outline. His voice cracked on that last line, and I hated that it moved me. You could have told them I was not involved back then, I pushed. You could have separated your self-loathing from my actual life. Instead, you stayed still while they turned me into the face of their worst fear. You let them think I stole years from her when I was nowhere near. Each sentence came out sharper than the last as the pattern clicked. He did not argue, which somehow made me angrier. I looked down and realized his hands were shaking against the grass. I know, he choked out, I kept hoping it would fade on its own. Like if we just kept showing up together, they would adjust over time. Hearing that lazy hope laid out like strategy almost broke something in me. That was your plan, I asked, waiting them out while I took hits. You could have been hated alone, you chose to share the target. He shook his head fast, 1, 2, 3 times, eyes wide. I loved you, he blurted, I still do, I did not understand the cost. He looked back at the stone like he needed her to judge him too. This is where present me wants to reach back and shake past me. Because part of me softened right then, against my better judgment. There is something about watching someone crumble in front of a grave. It makes your boundaries feel cruel even when they are basic survival. I hate that I hesitated instead of walking straight back to the car. So what now, I asked, because the confession was out, not undone. You keep letting them spit on my name so you can feel punished. Or you finally tell them you lied by omission and deal with fallout. He stayed quiet long enough that I thought he might choose option 1. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. It rested in his palm between us, dull in the low light. I have kept this on me every day, he muttered like a promise to fix things. He did not try to slip it on, he just held it up. I will tell them everything, he said, I will take the hit, not you. His hand trembled and the little band clicked softly against his wedding watch. I stared at that ring and thought of every room I had disappeared in. I thought of his mother begging the universe for a loyal son-in-law. I thought of his father pointing at me and calling me the scandal. You cannot undo years of cowardice with one dramatic visit and one speech. The words came out colder than I expected even to my own ears. I am not asking for instant forgiveness, he replied, I know I lost your trust. I am asking for a chance to repair what I broke publicly. You should not carry a story that does not belong to you. He closed his fist around the ring like he would hold that vow physically. For the first time I believed he actually saw the mess clearly. That did not magically fix how I felt standing over her. I still wanted to scream that he should have defended her better too. That he should have either stayed committed or left openly, not drifted halfway. Instead, I focused on the one thing still in my control. You go to them first, I said, and you use my name correctly or not at all. He nodded without argument, which was new enough to notice. If they want to hate me, he said, they can hate me for the real reasons. They can hate me for giving up early, not for cheating with ghosts. He wiped his face roughly with the back of his wrist. I will not let them throw that on you again. I told him I was not giving an answer about us that night. He flinched like he had expected that but still hoped differently. You can tell the truth because it is right, not as a bargain. I am not a reward for courage that should have been basic. His shoulders sagged and relief and fear flashed across his face together. We left the scene, Turi walking side by side but not touching. On the drive back, he kept glancing over, then jerking his eyes forward. I stared out my window and replayed every scene with new subtitles. The story I thought we were living had another layer under it. I knew the next chapter would not be about his grief, it would be about my choice. He was in my parking lot when I opened the door. Engine running, window down, his elbows on the steering wheel. They want us both there, he called out, tonight, no delay. My stomach flipped so hard I had to grip the railing. This was the moment I had been demanding and dreading at once. I walked to the car without answering and got in. His hands shook on the wheel as he pulled onto the street. I watched the road, not his face, because looking hurt too much. "You sure you want to come?" he asked, voice somewhere between hopeful and scared. I told him I was not the one who needed to be sure. We did not talk again until he parked in front of their house. He cut the engine but did not move, keys still in his hand. "If I choke," he murmured, "I want you to tell them anyway." That sentence told me more than any love declaration he had ever made. He still trusted me to carry truth he had dropped. I pushed my door open first, so he had to follow. On the porch, he reached for my fingers and I let him. Not as forgiveness, more like a temporary truce on the way into battle. He rang the bell and squeezed once, hard enough to hurt. I did not squeeze back, I just kept my hand there. His father answered and his face gave nothing away. "You came," he said, stepping aside, his gaze passing over our joined hands. His mother sat at the table already, tissues lined like soldiers. His sister stood against the counter with her arms folded tight. It felt less like a visit and more like a hearing. No food, no small talk, no framed photo this time. His father stayed standing and pointed at the chairs. "Sit," he instructed, there was no warmth in that word at all. We sat next to each other, but our bodies leaned opposite directions. I could feel how alone he suddenly was even while touching me. He cleared his throat and started before anyone could launch into him. "I let you all believe something that was not real," he began. "You thought there was another woman while she was alive," he went on. He drew a breath like he was about to jump off something high. "There was not," he finished. "The person you blamed was never there then." His mother shook her head slowly, eyes already watering. "You admitted there was someone," she whispered. "We did not imagine that." I checked out emotionally, he answered. "I pulled away when she needed me." He clenched his fists on the table to keep them from shaking. "Instead of explaining properly, I let you attach a stranger to my guilt." His father narrowed his eyes and turned toward me. "You expect us to believe you had nothing with her before?" he asked. "Believe it or not," I answered, "every message, every date is after." I kept my voice plain because defensiveness would sound like lying. His sister stared like she wanted to peel my skin for proof. Then came the part that actually impressed me, even while I hated everything. "I used Jenna as a shield," he admitted, forcing the words out fast. "You needed an enemy you could see, and I stood back and allowed it. I thought I deserved your anger, and I did not protect her." He finally turned and looked straight at me when he said that. His mother let out a raw sound that barely qualified as a word. "So we have been spitting on this girl for nothing?" she asked. "Not for nothing," he answered, "for my choices, but you aimed at the wrong person." I wanted to step in to soften it, and I stopped myself. He needed to feel how heavy that sentence really was. His father focused on me again, sharper now, less sure of his story. "You found him after the funeral?" he asked. "You never knew our daughter." I held his stare and nodded once. "I met a widower who acted single," I said, "not a cheating husband." My chest burned with how true that line felt in that room. His sister uncrossed her arms and leaned forward. "Why did you never correct us?" she asked him even once. He laughed, one short ugly blast, more at himself than anyone. "Because you were right about me in every other way," he answered. I baited inside the marriage, and I could not bear to argue technicalities. That took some air out of her anger, not all but some. "So she is not the villain in this," his sister muttered, mostly to herself. She looked at me again, really looked, not through me. "You still chose him knowing he carried all this," she added. That part was true and cut just as deep. His mother finally spoke directly to me and only me. "Do you love him?" she asked, "or are you just here to clear your name?" I swallowed because I knew whatever I answered would echo for years. I told her I loved the version of him who did not hide. I was still trying to decide if the T person actually existed. His father turned back to his son, the room swinging between them. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "This is your show." "I do not expect forgiveness," he replied, eyes red. "I only want you to stop dragging her into my failures. Call me selfish, call me weak, call me whatever you need, just leave her out." His voice wobbled on selfish, and strangely, I believed him. Silence settled thick and ugly while they processed that new frame. His mother twisted a tissue until it tore in half. "I wish you had loved my child better," she whispered, "but I cannot pretend this woman wronged her." She looked at me and her face cracked in several directions at once. "I can offer you basic decency," she added, "nothing more than that." Honestly, I had not even hoped for that level. Basic decency felt almost generous after being their personal scandal for months. His father gave a short nod like a judge closing a file. No one here will call you mistress again, he said. That label was unfair. The word again still carried weight, and I felt every letter. Then his mother aimed the next line right at the center of us. I still cannot celebrate this engagement, she announced, voice thin but firm. Maybe someday, maybe never, that is where I am. She folded her hands like that was her final statement for now. Her grief filled the space between us, and I could not argue with it. All eyes drifted to me as if on a string. This is where people expect a big romantic vow, right? Me declaring I will stand by him no matter what they think. Instead, I reached into my pocket and felt cool metal against my fingertips. I had brought the ring without deciding what I would do with it. I laid it on the table between us, not sliding it toward anyone. The tiny clink sounded louder than any raised voice that night. His eyes went straight to it, then up to my face. You are ending it, he breathed like he could not quite process the words. His hand hovered above the ring but did not touch. I am ending the engagement, I corrected, very clear, not your whole existence. You want to repair things with them, you do that as you. Not as part of a couple you never fully made public. I will not stand next to you in half-truth anymore. If we ever try again, it will be from zero, no ghost scripts. His father watched us with that exhausted older man expression. So this was not just our decision after all, he said. You still managed to ruin your own future without our help. It sounded harsh, but weirdly, there was almost a hint of respect in it. Maybe because I was refusing to twist myself into their convenient story. His mother looked stricken, guilty, relieved, everything mixed together. Please do not throw your whole life away because of us, she murmured. I shook my head and finally let some of my frustration show. I am doing this because of him and me, I answered, not because of you. You just showed me a mirror I had been avoiding. He finally picked up the ring and closed his fingers around it. Give me a chance to earn that back, he pleaded, palm clenched. Not from them, from you, away from all this. I could hear real fear under the words for once, not just self-pity. It made the choice hurt, but it did not change it. I told him I needed space that did not involve funerals or family tables. No more big scenes, no more dramatic gestures, just actual consistent honesty. If you want to be with me later, I said, you start by fixing yourself. Show me the man who would correct a lie even if everyone hates him. Until then, that ring stays in your drawer, not on my hand. We walked to the door together, but we did not touch. His mother hugged him briefly in the hall and then stepped back. She hesitated, then gave me a quick, awkward nod on my way out. It was not acceptance, not rejection, just acknowledgement that I existed. Honestly, that small shift felt bigger than any blessing would have. Outside, the air felt cold and sharp against my skin. He opened the car door for me out of habit, then paused. Do you want to ride home, he asked, like we were coworkers again. I shook my head and stepped back onto the sidewalk instead. I needed the walk to feel the weight of my own choice. I watched him drive off with the ring still in his pocket. No speeches, no running after me, just a long look through the window. We were two people who had done real damage and could not fix it fast. He had to stop letting guilt steer his life. I had to stop shrinking for his comfort. So yeah, his late wife's family no longer thinks I am a mistress, but they also watch me refuse to marry their broken hero.